Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're tackling a topic that's got a lot of parents and families buzzing with questions. The child tax credit for 2025. You might have heard some chatter about 3,600 payments per kid floating around out there. Maybe you saw a headline or caught a snippet on the news, and you're wondering, wait, am I getting that? What's the deal? Well, I've got you covered with all the latest info as of March 11th, 2025, and we're going to unpack everything. How much you're actually getting right now, who qualifies, what might happen with those big $3,600 dreams, and how you can claim this credit when tax season rolls around. This is a big one, especially if you've got little ones running around the house, or teenagers eating you out of house and home. So grab a snack, maybe a coffee, and let's dig into the nitty-gritty of the child tax credit for 2025. Oh, and if you love getting the full scoop on stuff like this that can put more money in your pocket, stick around to the end and hit that subscribe button. I'd love to keep you in the loop. All right, here we go. So, let's start with the big question on everyone's mind. Are we really getting $3,600 per child in 2025? Well, here's the straight-up truth. As of right now, no, that's not the deal. The Child Tax Credit, or CTC for short, is sitting at $2,000 per qualifying kid for the 2025 tax year. That's the baseline we're working with, and it's been that way since things settled back after some wild changes a few years ago. But there's a twist. Up to $1,700 of that $2,000 can be refundable, meaning if you don't owe a ton in taxes, you could still get some cash back. Now, I know $3,600 sounds a lot juicier, and trust me, I'll get to why that number's floating around. But for now, let's focus on what's locked in. $2,000 per child under 17, with that $1,700 refundable piece if you qualify. It's still a solid chunk of change to help with diapers, school supplies, or that endless grocery bill. Anyone with a teenager knows what I'm talking about, right? But there's a lot more to this story, because lawmakers are tossing around ideas to bump it up, and families are holding their breath to see if it'll happen. Let's rewind a bit, because this $3,600 idea didn't just come out of nowhere. Back in 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act shook things up big time. For that one glorious year, the CTC jumped to $3,600 per kid under 6 and $3,000 for kids aged 6 to 17, and they even sent out monthly payments, like actual checks hitting your bank account every month instead of waiting for tax season. It was a lifeline for a lot of families, cutting child poverty by a huge amount, and people loved it. I mean, imagine getting $300 a month per kid just to help with the bills. That's real money. But here's the catch. That expansion expired at the end of 2021, and since then, we've been back to the $2,000 setup. Fast forward to 2025, and there's all this talk about bringing back that bigger credit, maybe even making it $3,600 again or more. Vice President Kamala Harris has been out there pushing to restore the expanded CTC, even throwing in a wild $6,000 credit for families with babies under 1. On the other side, some Republican lawmakers are like, hey, let's go bigger. How about $5,000 per kid? It's a hot topic in Congress. But as of today, March 11th, 2025, no new law has passed. So we're still at $2,000, but the buzz is real, and it's worth keeping an eye on. Okay, so what does the child tax credit look like right now? It's pretty straightforward, but there are some rules you've got to nail down to cash in. For 2025, You get up to $2,000 per qualifying child, and that kid has to be under 17 by the end of the year, December 31st, 2025, to be exact. The credit starts shrinking if you make too much money, and the cutoff kicks in at $200,000 for single filers, like a single mom or dad, and $400,000 for married couples filing jointly. That's your modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI, which is basically your total income minus a few adjustments. If you're over those limits, the credit phases out by $50 for every $1,000 you go above the threshold. So, say you're a single parent making $210,000, $10,000 over the $200,000 mark. That's $10,000 chunks, so your credit drops by $500, leaving you with $1,500 per kid instead of the full $2,000. It's a sliding scale, but for most families, you're probably under those caps, so you're good for the full amount. Now, that refundable part, up to $1,700, is a big deal, because it means you don't have to owe taxes to get something back. Let's break it down with an example. Picture a family with 2 kids, ages 5 and 8. They qualify for $4,000 total, $2,000 per child. Say their tax bill before credits is only $2,500. Without the refundable piece, they just zero out their taxes and call it a day. But because $1,700 per kid is refundable, they can get back up to $3,400 of that $4,000 as a refund, even if it exceeds what they owe. So, they wipe out their $2,500 tax bill and still pocket $900 in cash. That's huge for families living paycheck to paycheck. It's not just a tax break, it's money in your hand. But here's the thing. You've got to meet all the eligibility rules to make this work, and there are a bunch of them. So let's dive into that next. Who qualifies for this credit? The IRS has a checklist, and you've got to tick every box. First, the age test. Your kid has to be under 17 on December 31st, 2025. So, if little Timmy turns 17 on December 30th, tough luck. He's out for that year. Second, the relationship test. The child has to be your son, daughter, stepchild, foster child, sibling, step-sibling, or a descendant, like a grandchild, niece, or nephew. Got a cousin's kid living with you? Sorry, that doesn't count unless you're their legal guardian. Third, the support test. The kid can't have paid for more than half their own expenses. If your 16-year-old's got a part-time job flipping burgers, that's fine, as long as they're not covering most of their own rent or groceries. Fourth, the dependent test. You have to claim them as a dependent on your tax return. No double dipping with an ex or grandma claiming the same kid. Fifth, citizenship. They need to be a U.S. citizen, national or resident alien, with a valid Social Security number or ITIN. Sixth, residency. They've got to live with you for more than half the year, so at least 183 days. Temporary stuff like summer camp or a weekend with the other parent doesn't mess that up. But if they're off at college full-time, you might need to check the rules. And finally, the income test. Your MAGI has to be under those phase-out limits I mentioned. $200,000 single, $400,000 joint. Let me give you a real-life scenario to tie this together. Say you're a married couple with 3 kids, ages 4, 7, and 14. You make $150,000 a year together, well under that $400,000 threshold. All your kids live with you, they're U.S. citizens, and you claim them as dependents. Boom! You're golden for $6,000 total. $2,000 per kid. If your tax bill's only $4,000, you zero that out and get $1,400 back because of the $1,700 refundable cap per child. $5,100 total refundable across 3 kids, minus the $4,000 you owed. That's a nice little bonus to stash away or spend on a family trip. But if you're over the income limit or miss one of those tests, like if your 14-year-old moved out to live with their aunt for 8 months, you'd lose out on that chunk. It's strict, but it's doable if you've got your ducks in a row. So, what about that $3,600 dream? Like I said, it's not law yet, but the chatter's heating up. Back in 2021, that expansion was a hit. Families got more money, and it came monthly instead of a lump sum at tax time. Lawmakers loved the results, but agreeing on how to pay for it is the sticking point. Kamala Harris is out there saying, let's bring back $3,600 per kid and throw in $6,000 for newborns. She's picturing it as a way to help new parents with cribs, formula, all that pricey baby stuff. Meanwhile, some Republicans are countering with, how about $5,000 per kid across the board? It's a political tug-of-war. Democrats want it refundable and monthly. Some Republicans want it bigger but tied to work requirements. If anything passes, it could kick in mid-2025 or retroactively. But right now, it's all talk, no action. Keep an eye on the IRS website, irs.gov, or news from folks like Anthony Lane, who's tracking this stuff, because if it happens, you'll want to know ASAP. How do you actually claim this credit? Easy, but you've got to do it right. When you file your 2025 taxes in early 2026, you'll use Form 1040, and you'll need to attach Schedule 8812. That's the one for credits for qualifying children and other dependents. There's a worksheet in the instructions to figure out your exact amount, factoring in your income and how many kids qualify. Double-check everything, names, social security numbers, all that jazz, because mistakes can delay your refund. You can file electronically, which is faster, or mail it in if you're old school. Either way, get it in by April 15, 2026, unless you snag an extension. If that $3,600 expansion hits later, the IRS might adjust things mid-year, but for now, plan on claiming that $2,000 per kid. All right, folks, that's the mega rundown on the 2025 child tax credit. $2,000 locked in, $3,600 on the wish list, and all the rules to make it yours. It's a lifeline for families, and who knows, maybe we'll see those bigger payments yet. If you found this helpful, or if you're crossing your fingers for that $3,600, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your take. And please, if you want more money-saving tips like this, hit that subscribe button right now. It's quick, it's free, and it keeps you in the know. Thanks for hanging out through this epic breakdown. See you next time.